As I was saying just now," he began as loudly as possible, I was saying just now, ladies and gentlemen, to Akim Petrovitch, that Russia, yes, Russia, in short, you understand that I mean to say Russia is living. It is my profound conviction through a period of humanity." Humanity was heard at the other end of the table. Huh, huh, t. Ivan Ilyitch stopped. Sudanmov got up from his chair and began to try and see who had shouted. Akim Petrovitch stealthily shook his head as though admonishing the guests. Ivan Ilyitch saw this distinction, but in his confusion said nothing. "Humanity," he continued obstinately, "and this evening, not and only this evening, I said to Stefan Nikiforovitch, yes, that the regeneration, so to speak, of things—" "Your Excellency!" was heard a loud exclamation at the other end of the table. "What is your pleasure?" answered Ivan Ilyitch, pulling up short, and trying to distinguish who had called to him. "Nothing at all, your Excellency. I was carried away. Continue, continue," the voice was heard again. Ivan Ilyitch felt upset. "The regeneration, so to speak, of those same things." "Your Excellency!" the voice shouted again. "What do you want?" "How do you do?" This time Ivan Ilyitch could not restrain himself. He broke off his speech and turned to the assailant, who had disturbed the general harmony. He was a very young lad, still at school, who had taken more than a drop too much, and was the object of great suspicion to the general. He had been shouting for a long time past, and had even broken a glass and two plates, maintaining that this was the proper thing to do at a wedding. At the moment when Ivan Ilyitch turned towards him, the officer was beginning to pitch into the noisy youngster. "What are you about? Why are you yelling? We shall turn you out, that's what we shall do." "I don't mean you, your Excellency. I don't mean you. Continue," cried the hilarious schoolboy, lolling back in his chair. "Continue. I am listening. I am very much pleased with you. Praiseworthy, praiseworthy." "The wretched boy is drunk," said Sudanmov in a whisper. "I see that he is drunk, but—" "I was just telling a very amusing anecdote, your Excellency," began the officer, "about a lieutenant in our company who was talking just like that to his superior officers. So this young man is imitating him now. To every word of his superior officers he said, 'Praiseworthy, praiseworthy.' He was turned out of the army 10 years ago on account of it." What lieutenant was that?" "In our company, your Excellency. He went out of his mind over the word praiseworthy. At first they tried gentle methods, then they put him under arrest. His commanding officer admonished him in the most fatherly way, and he answered, 'Praiseworthy, praiseworthy.' And strange to say, the officer was a fine-looking man, over 6 feet tall. They meant to court-martial him, but when they perceived that he was mad—" "So, a schoolboy's prank need not be taken seriously. For my part, I am ready to overlook it." "They held a medical inquiry, your Excellency." "Upon my word, but he was alive, wasn't he?" "What? Did they dissect him?" A loud and almost universal roar of laughter resounded amongst the guests, who had till then behaved with decorum. Ivan Ilyitch was furious. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted, at first scarcely stammering, "I am fully capable of apprehending that a man is not dissected alive. I imagine that in his derangement he has ceased to be alive, that is, that he has died. That is, I mean to say, that you don't like me, yet I like you all, yes, I like Porfiry. I am lowering myself by speaking like this." At that moment Ivan Ilyitch spluttered so that great dab of saliva flew onto the tablecloth in a most conspicuous place. Sudanmov flew to wipe it off with a table napkin. This last disaster crushed him completely. "My friends, this is too much!" he cried in despair. "The man is drunk, your Excellency," Sudanmov prompted him again. "Porfiry, I see that you all— Yes, I say that I hope— Yes, I call upon you all to tell me in what way I have lowered myself." Ivan Ilyitch was almost crying. "Your Excellency, good heavens! Porfiry, I appeal to you. Tell me, when I came, yes, to your wedding, I had an object. I was aiming at moral elevation. I wanted to be felt. I appealed to all. Am I greatly lowered in your eyes, or not?" A deathlike silence. That was just it. A deathlike silence. And to such a downright question, they might at least shouted at that this minute flashed through his Excellency's head. But the guests only looked at one another. Akim Petrovitch sat more dead than alive, while Sudomov, numb with terror, was repeating to himself the awful question which had occurred to him more than once already. What shall I have to pay for all this tomorrow? At this point the young man on the comic paper, who was very drunk, but who had hitherto sat in a morose silence, addressed Ivan Ilyitch directly, and with flashing eyes began answering in the name of the whole company. "Yes," he said in a loud voice, "yes, you have lowered yourself. Yes, you are a reactionary, a reactionary. Young man, you are forgetting yourself. To whom you are speaking to so express it?" Ivan Ilyitch cried furiously, jumping up from his seat again. "To you, and secondly, I am not a young man. You've come to give yourself airs and try and win popularity." "Sudomov, what does this mean?" cried Ivan Ilyitch. But Sudomov was reduced to such horror that he stood still like a post, and was utterly at a loss for what to do. The guests, too, sat mute in their seats, all but the artist and the schoolboy, who applauded and shouted, "Bravo! Bravo!" The young man on the comic paper went on shouting with unrestrained violence, "Yes, you come to show yourself off your humanity. You've hindered the enjoyment of everyone. You've been drinking champagne without thinking that it is beyond the means of a clerk at 10 rubles a month, and I suspect that you are one of those high officials who are a little too fond of the young wives of their clerks. What is more, I am convinced that you support state monopolies. Yes, yes, yes!" "Sudomov!" shouted Ivan Ilyitch, holding out his hands to him. He felt that every word uttered by this comic young man was a fresh dagger at his heart. "Directly, your Excellency. Please do not disturb yourself," Sudomov cried energetically, rushing up to the comic young man, seizing him by the collar and dragging him away from the table. Such physical strength could indeed not have been expected from the weakly-looking Sudomov, but the comic man was very drunk, while Sudomov was perfectly sober. Then he gave him 2 or 3 cuffs in the back and thrust him out the door. "You are all scoundrels!" roared the young man of the comic paper. "I will caricature you all tomorrow in the firebrand." They all leapt up from their seats. Your Excellency!" cried Sudomov, his mother and several others crowding round the general. "Your Excellency, do not be disturbed." "No, no," cried the general. "I am annihilated. I mean to bless you, so to speak, and this is how I am paid. For everything. He sank onto a chair as though unconscious, laid both his arms on the table, and bowed his head over them, straight into a plate of blancmange. There was no need to describe the general's horror. A minute later he got up, evidently meaning to go out, gave a lurch, stumbled against the leg of a chair, fell full length on the floor, and snored.